Hare Krishna. Today I'll talk about 4 aids of supramental yoga. So in the book called Synthesis of Yoga, SriAurobindo has spoken about 4 aids, 4 things that will help an aspirant, a practitioner of supramental yoga to progress faster. So what are those 4 aids? The aids that is going to help one practicing in supramental yoga of SriAurobindo. So these 4 things that he has spoken about, the first one is called Shastra. Shastra are scriptures. The second thing he talks about is Uschaha or enthusiasm. The third thing that he has spoken about is Guru, and the fourth thing is Kala. So these are 4 things that he said will help an aspirant or a practitioner of supramental yoga. So let's discuss all the 4 of them, what he has spoken about. So let's take up the first one. First one he said is Shastra or the scripture or the word. And we know in Bible it was spoken that in the beginning there was a word, and the word was one with God. The word was God. So when he's talking about Shastra, he's talking about the scriptures. He says that the eternal Shastra, the eternal word, is folded up in the heart of every living being. So it is in the heart. It's deep within the heart, and it gets revealed from deep within our heart. But it really doesn't happen that way for everybody. There are very, very rare people to whom those words, that power, the divine message that comes from deep within their heart, because it is by the grace of the divine, or because of the preparation of the soul, which is one with the divine always, the word comes to the mind from the heart, and the aspirants start taking the journey. In most of the cases, in majority of the cases, this scripture, this word that carries the vibration, the consciousness of the divine, is usually received from outside, whether it is Bhagavad Gita, its Upanishads, or it is Srimad Bhagavatam, Life Divine, Savitri, the Mother. In my case, for example, I received it from the Mother. When I was reading it, I received it myself. So it usually comes from outside in most cases. There are very few who are really blessed souls on whom the divine grace comes directly, and the Lord speaks from within the heart, and the person sets on the journey. And this word carries a lot of power in it, right? So as the person progresses, the inner scripture, the Veda that is folded up within the heart of every being, the knowledge, the divine knowledge which dwells within the heart, that lotus starts blooming as the person starts taking the journey. But the beginning, it starts from outward, and then as the progress happens, it happens from inside. And here SriAurobindo makes a very important point. He says he who approached the divine or infinite is already called by the infinite. He is saying that anyone who is taking the path towards the Supreme Divine, or the infinite, or Brahman, whatever you call him by any name, anyone who is making that journey towards the divine is already received the call from the divine. So it appears as if the call first has to come from the Lord. He has to call, and that is how the mind of the man, which is usually fascinated by finite things of the world, gets all of a sudden enamored and fascinated by the infinite. He seeks infinite. He gets fascinated about the infinite. He reads, he tries to learn. He loves to know about the infinite. And he starts slowly getting more and more involved, whether in meditation, in prayer, in reading the books. So that's what he says. He says all this thing happens when gets the message from outside, the word comes from the outside. The lotus of our heart opens and we get into the path. But he says all these things happen usually after there is a call from the divine and the soul of the man, soul of the individual has already responded to it. So that's the first thing, is the scripture. Though it says scripture or shastra, it's usually the word, the power or the consciousness that is carried in this scriptures. Okay, when it comes from the Guru. In our case, people who are practicing supramental yoga, most of them say that, okay, I was reading Life Divine, somebody says I was reading Synthesis of Yoga, somebody says, in my case, when I opened and started reading The Mother, it happens, and there is all of a sudden there is a rush of energy and you are connected with the consciousness of the divine or the Guru, and that then takes you on the journey. Now the second thing is uscha, the enthusiasm. This is very important because in the beginning, the individual who is on the path, he gets the message, the heart starts opening up, there is a fascination, there is an enchantment towards the infinite, the divine. He uses his own enthusiasm, he uses his own effort, his enthusiasm, he starts practicing. Whether it is worshipping the divine in different forms, meditating on him, reading books that talks about which praises the glory of the Lord, or the scriptures which describes about the divine, the path, the knowledge. He gets fascinated and starts doing practice in various ways, chanting, meditation, worshipping, devotion, whatever it is, or doing work for the divine. So in the beginning, this enthusiasm helps him to start the practice, and a time comes when a force far greater than him, the divine force, which is called Shakti, starts descending on him. And once that force starts descending, which is called Shakti, the force descends, then slowly the person realizes that the instrument through which he was doing all these efforts are not that much helpful anymore. He starts surrendering to this force and then realizes his mind, his ego, his intelligence, his body, his life force, these are all the instruments of that divine force. So that divine force starts taking over the sadhana of the supramental yogi and uses all these faculties as its instruments, the mind, the life, the body, the intellect, the ego, everything is used as instruments for the growth and progression of the individual towards union with the divine. So that's the second thing, what is called uscha, enthusiasm to start the practice. Then comes the third one, which SriAurobindo says is Guru. He says the only Guru of supramental yoga is Supreme Divine, the Paramatman or Brahman, who dwells in the heart of each and every living being. But in the beginning, most of the times, the aspirant, the practitioners of the supramental yoga, find it a little bit difficult to connect with the Supreme or the Divine, because he is not only transcends everything, anything that the mind can think of. It's very hard to conceptualize or connect with that, because the Lord, He is everything, and everything is in Him, yet He transcends all. So to connect with the transcendent Divine or Brahman is very difficult for an ordinary mind in the beginning. So he tries to get hold of either incarnations like Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, or Divine Mother, anyone, or he tries to connect with various teachers, various prophets. So in the beginning, all this helps him to directly or indirectly connect with the conception of the Divine. So let's say somebody worships Lord Krishna. Through Krishna, he approaches the Divine. Somebody worships, let's say, Jesus. He approaches the Lord through Jesus. Or somebody approaches Divine Mother or Adi Shakti Mother. She approaches the Divine through Divine Mother. So this, the concept Ishtadevata, or one who one worships and uses that as his path or his door or his portal to approach the Supreme Divine. And that most of the times, that is the starting point for most of the devotees. And slowly as the mind of the man turns within, one gets connected with the Supreme Divine who dwells within his heart, and then his knowledge expands, and then practice deepens. Slowly one realizes that Divine is everywhere in everything. One is pervaded by the Divine. He is within, he is without, he is all over the place. And he starts more and more getting involved and practicing and meditating and worshipping the Supreme. And his Guru, of course, his Guru is Ishta. So most of the times it is Ishta, Guru, Supreme Divine. One worships everybody and meditates on them, and that helps him to progress. And the last or the fourth one he talks about is time or Kala. So Kala usually is a field which allows the play of forces. So most of the times when person is operating from egoic state of consciousness and there is an individual effort, the ego is making the effort to make the journey, we always feel that time is restraining us. It is kind of creating a resistance in the growth. That's how it appears in the beginning, because time constrains everybody. It doesn't give the freedom to progress fast. But as the force, the Shakti of the Supreme descends on us, and our sadhana is guided and directed more and more by the Divine energy rather than our own energy, we realize that the same force, the time, the field of time which was restraining us, has become a helper, have become a conduit, a helper in our progress. It is no more resisting our progress. On the contrary, it is helping us. It allows everything to happen so smoothly. Things starts unfolding in life, and all the coincidences started happening. Things starts happening, and the aspirant starts progressing. So these are four things that SriAurobindo talks about, which helps a yogi of supramental yoga while he journey towards the Divine. And so just to repeat, the first one he talks about is scripture. That means the written spoken words, or in the scriptures, or the word that comes from within his heart by the Supreme Divine, or the message from the soul. It could be either way, but in most cases it comes from outside. But rarely, very fortunate, very evolved souls, or somebody who has received the grace of the Lord, the word comes from within, and that carries the power which opens up the lotus of our heart, and the knowledge starts flowing from within, and we start getting fascinated and enamored by the Supreme Divine, by the Lord, and then our journey begins. The second one is enthusiasm or utshaha, which helps us to initially start the practice, a devotion, start practicing the worshipping, devotion, chanting, meditation, servicing for the Lord. And at a certain point in time, this enthusiasm helps to us to receive divine grace. The power of the divine Shakti starts flowing through us, descends on us, and takes over our sadhana and helps us to progress faster. The third thing is Guru. The Supreme Divine is the only Guru. That's what SriAurobindo says. Paramatma, Satchidananda Brahma is the only Guru, and he dwells in the heart of everybody. But in the beginning, it always appears. One takes up a Ishtadeva or a Guru from outside and worships him, and through him one approaches to Brahman. And as the sadhana progresses, at some point in time, he realizes that the Brahman or Supreme is all pervading, dwells within him, without him, and one is always surrounded by the Lord, and his devotion towards Paramatma or Supreme or Brahman starts deepening, and it takes him towards the union with the Lord. And the last thing is time. Time is an energy we know of the Lord. It is a field where all the forces play. In the beginning, time appears to the ego as something which is restraining us, which is binding us, which is tying us up, not letting us progress. It appears like an enemy. But as we progress, as the divine force, the Shakti, takes up our sadhana, slowly we realize that the time is a helper. It is a facilitator. It's helping us in our journey rather than being a restrainer. And this is how slowly one person, the sadhaka of the supramental yoga, progresses towards his ultimate goal of union with the divine and manifesting the divine energy through his instruments, his mind, life and body, and ultimately he becomes a divine worker. So the ultimate objective of supramental yoga is to become a divine worker. So that means not only union with the divine in his static essence, which is called self or Brahman, also being united with the divine and working with the energy of the divine or Shakti in the dynamic aspect of our life. So one is always united with the Lord, statically as well as dynamically. All the old yogas spoke about static union, which we call as samadhi, in which one is united with the static aspect of the Brahman, which is called self. Here SriAurobindo talks about union with both static aspect of the Brahman to start with, and then the dynamic aspect of the Brahman, which he calls as Shakti, Adi Shakti, Divine Mother. So that way one is always in constant union with divine, and one becomes an instrument of divine work, and he becomes the servant and an instrument of the divine work. And that is what the ultimate objective of supramental yoga. I hope it makes sense. Thank you. Hare Krishna.